For instance, the financial situation of the United States. When I talk to my conservative friends right here, they always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. You're right in that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Not even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, not even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds, paper. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print the limited amounts of money out of thin air, why did they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper.
The States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the first Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed or Federal Reserve is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words "In God We Trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the President is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the President is President of the corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen, and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony.
At the international level, central bankers use the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to make more money while exploiting the resources of countries they lend to, bankrupting them in the process. The central bank of central banks is the Rothschild-created Bank for International Settlements.
Cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency. It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking. The core things that banks have done since the 1300s, those are going to go away, 100%. And let's just be clear what I mean by that. The reason that we even have banks originated in Italy around the year like 1340, all right? And the reason they originated was because of a set of accounting advances that allowed banks to serve as trusted intermediaries between parties that owed each other money. Before that, literally, I would write you a note and I would promise to pay you money and you'd put the note in your pocket and you'd see if anybody else would take the note. You know, that's why we refer to discounting notes. And then banks arose and it was like, you no longer need to do that. We'll take care of it for you, but you're going to have to pay us to do that. That function of needing a trusted intermediary to maintain ledgers of account to figure out, do I owe Brooks money or does Brooks owe me money? It turns out that function no longer has to be done by human beings. The same way we don't need postal clerks anymore. I can send you an email for free and it's instant and that's just the end of the post office. Sorry, but it just is. That function will go away. What's going to be left for banks is the high value add services, you know, structured finance, investment advisory, you know, all of the things that make a dynamic economy function. We still need people to do that. There's a lot of creativity going on in finance. But the core of banking, the base of the pyramid, the thing that drives most of their revenue, doesn't need to exist. And that's why I say, and I was saying to one of the organizers even before we stood up on this panel, cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency. It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking. Just if you take nothing from this panel but that's what you need to understand.
No matter where you go in the world, the money is controlled by the banking system. They decide if people eat or if they don't eat. Who's a billionaire and who lives on less than $1 a day? He who controls the money controls the world, and a very few control the money.
If this small group wanted to dominate the entire world, what would they need to control to accomplish it? First and foremost, they'd have to control money, and they do. Controlling money allows them to run everything else. They'd need to control energy, and they do. They already control big agriculture and world trade. They're buying up water supplies worldwide. They've got health in their pocket, and they're trying to suppress natural alternatives. Mainly, they'd have to control what information we'd get and how we'd react to it. For complete domination, dissent has to be controlled. They'd need to take away our rights, spy on ordinary citizens, and track every aspect around.
If inflation isn't theft, then why can't people counterfeit money?
If they can just print money, why do we pay taxes?
Wow.
If inflation is not theft and we can just print money and we don't have enough money, we can just print more money and give everyone that doesn't have enough money. Why don't we just do that instead of paying taxes? Inflation is legal counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminal inflation. So central banking is a coordinated currency counterfeiting cartel that runs the world. It's a Band-Aid. You know what Milton Friedman said about inflation is that it's just like alcoholism. The good effects come early, right? You print the money, you have the drink, you feel good. The hangover comes later. The same is true of inflation. Every time the crisis comes, you have to print exponentially more money because there are exponentially more liabilities in the system from the last round of printing. And so this is why it's unsustainable, and this is why it always culminates in hyperinflation. Because the central bank has not only the precedent, but also the incentive to continue printing the money until the currency hyperinflates into worthlessness.
I came to the conclusion that the Federal Reserve needed to be abolished for 7 reasons, actually, and I'd like to read them for you now. I've stated them in rather concise terms. Hopefully they'll have some shock value, so you can remember them. And here they are. First of all, it is incapable of accomplishing its stated objectives. 2, it is a cartel operating against the public interest. 3, it is the supreme instrument of usury. 4, it generates our most unfair tax. 5, it encourages war. 6, it destabilizes the economy. And 7, it is an instrument of totalitarianism.
The hidden secrets of money, some of them are hidden in plain sight. They're like right in front of you. The way the monetary system works is something that isn't actually hidden away from all of us. It's out in the open, but it's complex and people just they can't see how it works. It's hard for them to imagine that we're living in such a hoax. Others are meant to be secret, but the truth is slowly coming out, like the Federal Reserve being a private corporation and not really part of the US government. But when I started studying this, what I found was that there was no place that I could point people to where they could get it all in one spot. And so I basically decided to write my book about it and consolidate monetary history, economics, the markets, fundamentals of gold and silver. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in economics, and I've sort of made it my job to lift the fog for people.
It's certainly a possibility. The other side, the more positive side, and I think you hear people talk about this in terms of, there's like a red pill and there's a blue pill, like from the Matrix, and then there's like black pills, which this dystopian, completely AI-run world.
Oh, okay.
Where
I haven't heard of a black pill.
Human slaves, right, where you're literally like plugged into the Matrix and your energy is being used to basically support the AI. That's like this black pill dystopian world where there's the white pill, right? There's this where we come together, everything is being done for the benefit of humanity generally. So even environmental pursuits and things that are used more as a black pill trending narrative, climate change, things like that, are actually turned and used for the good. There's nothing wrong with cleaning up our systems and making everything more efficient, less environmentally destructive, things of that nature, right? So I think that we are at the point where we are starting to heavily influence which one of those paths we're starting to take. I would like to head in the white pill direction. I believe that reasonable people would prefer the white pill direction. Even the central bank leaderships and the Klaus Schwabs of the world would ultimately rather live in the white pill world. They just are having trouble letting go of their power from the past. This is your old people.
Can you talk a little about your thoughts on that? Well, I would say I don't see it so much as returning, but more of a back to the future. Okay. I think that what a gold standard stands for is monetary discipline for its own sake. That is, if money is supposed to be a unit of account and a reliable measure and a dependable store of value, it really shouldn't be subject to who's the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And I think that money needs to be stable and provide the foundation for productive economic growth. And when money is just a variable that financial markets toss around, or it's part of a derivatives formula, or it's part of someone speculating on currencies, it's not serving the private sector in the sense of providing that reliable unit of account so you can make plans. And under a gold standard, you did have that stability, and I think that's what's missing. And And so I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way. The point is, do you have a unified money system so that when you talk about the international marketplace, everyone is playing on a level monetary playing field? And it's very important to have a rules-based approach. And that's why I'm advocating that we need to look at the virtues of a gold standard and try to come up with something much closer to matching those. And then I think we would have more solid economic growth.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.